So, on today's Academy lesson, we're going to talk about something that a number of you guys have actually asked me on different comments and different videos in how to spread cards in a way where it doesn't look like a tight spread, that it's actually a wide spread. So, a number of you guys asked me this in previous comments, and I thought today I would acquiesce to those requests and show you guys how to better spread the cards, not only in your hands, but also when you're spreading them from hand to hand or even with a one-handed fan. So let's get into that right now. Now, one of the things that people tend to neglect when it comes to spreading cards is that the cards are in your hand. I know that seems like a very obvious point to make, but the first thing and the first contact starts at your hand. So you need to have hands that are properly cleaned. You want to have hands that are not moist. You don't want to have humid hands. And I know this is an issue for some people that you might have sweat in your hands. You want to make sure that your hands are as dry as possible, but that there is some sort of moisturization. So what I mean by that is just having basic hygiene is one way to pretty much politely put this, but you want to make sure that your hands are clean. You want to make sure that your hands don't have any sort of sweat or anything sticky, because then that could easily transfer over to the cards and make the spreading process a little bit more difficult. So the first advice is to make sure that you have clean and moisturized hands. Now, moisturized hands is very different than wet hands. So what I mean by moisturized hands is take some time every once in a while, not saying to do this every day, but put some moisturizer on your hand and just rub it in. Do that every couple of days. Wash your hands on a regular basis, and you're going to have the right sort of grip and the right sort of hands to be able to spread cards and not transfer any of that gunk to the deck. So that's the first tip. The second tip is something that I echo in every single video that is catered towards beginner magicians, and that is the grip is the most important thing. When you're holding a deck of cards, keep in mind that you are holding essentially paper, and that paper has been treated through a chemical process to be able to spread and to be able to be played with. So these cards have a purpose. And you notice that when you hand a deck of cards to somebody that doesn't necessarily know how to play cards, their cards last probably one gaming session. And the reason for that is because they overcompensate. They don't know the right grip to hold the cards. So typically you have people scrunching in the cards, you have people gripping on the cards really hard. And really, you don't need a lot of pressure to hold a deck of cards in your hand. All you need is the lightest pressure you can probably muster with your non-dominant hand. So in this case, remember, if you are left-handed, you're going to hold the deck in your right hand. If you are right-handed, you're going to hold the deck in your left hand. The right force that you need to exert on the cards is enough so that the cards are not going to fall out of your hand, but not more than that. You don't want to squeeze the cards. You don't want to purposely put any more extra force than you need to hold the deck. Now, when you're spreading them, the same thing applies. Every time I spread a deck, I try to spread the deck as delicately as I possibly can. Some people that I've noticed early on, you have this very tight spread because you're afraid of the cards falling. As you develop more skill and more comfort in Magic, you'll realize that you could spread the cards without fear of that wider and wider. So again, another tip is to hold the cards as lightly as possible. When you're spreading the cards, you want to insert a little bit of a chunk in the crotch, in this case of the right hand, and notice that my right hand is underneath gripping a large portion of the cards. This allows me to have a wide spread and still maintain the cards under my complete control. So at no point are the cards loose, at no point are the cards anywhere but under my complete control. So that's another little bit of a micro tip there. So when you're doing a fan of cards, an even pressure is probably your best friend. You don't want to be inconsistent. Some people kind of fan and then they stop putting pressure and you have kind of a weak sauce fan. You want to make sure that you're giving the same amount of pressure and the same amount of force consistently throughout the entirety of the fan. Now, when I do a fan, I hold the cards in my right hand. So it's kind of an odd grip. I hold the cards in my right hand like this. So the cards are protruding off of the left side of my right hand. I'll give you a second to process that weird sentence, but they're protruding off the left side of my right hand. And when I turn this half over, it's my middle finger that's exerting the necessary rotation in order to spread the cards. So my middle finger is coming in and making contact with the back of the upper right corner and giving an even counterclockwise motion. Now, what that's going to allow you to do is to have a very wide fan here with the right hand. Now, the advantage of this is that you are looking at the cards as you fan them. So in the previous video, actually in the piggybacker video, I talked about a way where you could fan the cards and do a force. This is very effective with this particular technique and this particular way of doing a fan, because you're staring at the cards and you could show them to the spectator this way. So that's just a little bit of a tidbit there. But the best advice I could give you is have a consistent and even spread when you are actually fanning the cards. So you want to make sure that it's consistent all the way around and you are not faltering halfway through. Now that's going to take some practice, and some people tend to neglect the power of practice. This wasn't something that I got overnight. This is something that took a long time to be able to achieve. So don't neglect the power of practice, and don't be discouraged when it doesn't work immediately. That's another important advice, because it's very easy to find yourself not working or not doing a certain move, and it never seems possible. It's going to seem like it's going to take either years, or it's just not going to happen because of your hand size or whatever. It will if you practice consistently. If you're just there, eventually you're going to notice one day you're just going to hit it, and you're going to wonder why it is you ever questioned yourself to begin with. Now, with the one-handed fans, in order to spread the cards as wide as possible, I learned this technique from watching old videos of Jeff Sheridan. I'm going to link the videos below that I watched, but I ended up buying his DVD set. He was pretty much one of the pioneers of card manipulation. He taught Jeff McBride. He taught David Copperfield. He taught a lot of the pioneers for card manipulation back in the day. So I just watched his fan, and I would study his technique and the way he would grip cards. And whenever he did a fan, typically when I was first learning the fans, it would look something like this, because I learned from the Mark Wilson Guide to Magic. And the grip that he had was something like this. So your thumb would be in the back and your fingers would be in the front like this. And then you would do a little bit of a spreading action, and that was your one-handed fan. That's why I learned it from Mark Wilson's Guide to Magic. Then eventually I learned to have a straddle grip. So a straddle grip is where your forefinger is on the top, your middle finger and your ring finger on the side here, the short edge, and your pinky is all the way in the back down here. Now you are holding the cards essentially by the pressure between the forefinger and the pinky. And of course, these fingers are bracing the packet, making sure it doesn't fall. Now, initially, when you're going to get into this grip, you're going to try to hold the cards and give it a Hulk grip. That's because you're not used to the actual finger strength necessary to hold the cards. But eventually, you're just going to be able to hold the cards like this, no problem, without putting or bending the cards or exerting more force than you actually need. So now you bring your thumb to the lowermost part of the little packet you're holding. And what's going to happen is that you are just going to allow the cards to start spreading by themselves. You're going to bring your hands like this, and you're just going to slowly spread the cards in your hand. Now, the hand motion is this. You're going to bring the thumb down and just spread the cards. Now, notice when I do this, there's an opposing force. So these fingers are moving downward as the thumb is moving up. So what this sort of action allows you to do is that you're going to spread the bottom of the packet with these cards, and the top is being spread by the thumb. So it's a combination of the actions of my lower fingers and my thumb, which actually ends up spreading the cards wider. So it's not just reliant on my thumb to spread the cards. The fingers in the front, they're spreading the cards, as well as the thumb is spreading the cards on top. So all the fingers are doing some sort of spreading action. Now, it's important that you practice this consistently, because eventually what's going to start to happen is that you're going to find the right placement of your thumb in order to maximize the actual spread itself. But as far as the grip is concerned, and as far as the way you hold it, that's just the grip that I've developed over the years to best have a spread where you could see absolutely every card. And I think this one, yeah, you can actually see all the cards in the spread. So that is just a little bit of a tip on that, but don't neglect practice. Practice is the most important aspect of doing any sort of fan or any move in Magic whatsoever, and you're not going to avoid having some sort of failure. So just get used to it in the beginning, and then eventually your fruits of labor will reward you when you actually accomplish the move effectively. So to summarize this particular video, I think the easiest thing that you could do right off the bat in order to just notice changes is to change the grip that you have and to practice the grip. A lot of people tend to neglect this, and they want to jump on to other things. They want to learn certain moves, and they want to jump onto the next thing as fast as possible. Slow down, Focus on certain things that you would often overlook, like, for example, your hands, or for example, just holding the cards. Make sure that you're able to hold the cards comfortably. Make sure that the cards are comfortable in your hand, and become almost like an extension of you. You hear that often when it comes to people that train in martial arts, when it comes to bow staff skills, the quote Napoleon Dynamite, or anything that requires any sort of martial art where you're holding something. It becomes to the point where that object is an extension of your body and almost becomes one of your extra limbs. So that's kind of the way you want to approach a deck. It's going to get to the point where holding a deck and spreading a deck is just going to be an extension of your own body almost. So you want to get to that point. You want to make sure where you're comfortable holding a deck. And yes, it is going to take a little bit of practice. So that's something that you signed up for when it came to learning magic or performance arts. So get used to it. But thank you guys for being part of the Academy. And I hope to see you guys on the next lesson.